This meeting to order at 6:05. Welcome, everyone. Seems like it's been a really long time since the last one, because it was still cold the last time.
For 2 months, a lot has happened. When you
Yeah.
look out the back,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
it really has. Luckily, it hasn't hurt us for taping, because they're done by the time we come in, so
Good.
that's a good thing.
Which leads us to item one.
Which leads us to item one, high school
That'll-
relocation update.
There's a whole lot going on, but none of it's really affecting us.
Okay, so,
I will, unless you want to talk to them about making that access better.
Sure.
All right, I'll say they can't park three, but that bus right close to the fence, I mean,
Now, so that was actually something that has been a problem for everybody.
Yeah.
Because the trainer can't get her gator out to go to the games. So
okay.
that bus is normally not been there. It started out there. They realized they couldn't get the gator through. I said to Brendan that, I can't even get my gear through there.
Right,
We all recognize it's a problem.
Yeah.
They just haven't figured out where the hell they can put the bus. So
Well,
when
this-
they know there isn't any games going on, they put it back there. Otherwise, they're playing ring around the parking spot.
all right. But it can't be
But they
there.
are aware of it.
Okay,
all right. Anything else on the high school right now?
Not really. They're just busy digging holes and putting in pylons.
Yeah, I understand the groundbreaking was last Saturday,
No,
Uh,
Friday,
Friday,
Friday?
which actually is just finished and we are putting it up tonight.
yeah, worked very well, very nice, very nice, I
Oh,
thought.
good, excellent, okay. All right. We also had a WCAT forecast in there. Any changes to that?
That's the financial.
That's the financial.
I don't think so.
Probably.
But I do think that Kevin is meeting with Paul to go over the numbers
Yeah.
after this
we were
meeting.
Puzzled by the number.
Yeah.
So we'll just have a quick conversation with that after this and.
That's the meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I suspect I know what's going on, but I just wanna make sure that it's what I'm thinking. But otherwise, we have received our payment or what will be our payment, and we are continuing to move on and keep ourselves going.
Okay, apropos of that, because I was thinking about this before coming over here tonight. Verizon announced not too long ago they were getting out of the cable business. And I assume that the contract that's in place right now reflects that.
Yeah, so as it stands right now, Verizon has been claiming they're getting out of the cable business for the past 10 years. And to that end, they are only doing 5-year contracts. The contract we currently have right now, which is 5 years, is due up in 26.
26 or 27.
26 or 27. Interestingly enough, the Comcast contract is due up the same year. So we will
Comcast is
have-
27.
So they're
They're
both
both
due
the
up at
same.
27, so we will actually have 90% of our funds will be in negotiation at the same time.
wasn't there a 3-year out in Verizon?
There is a 3-year out in the Verizon. I don't think they're gonna touch it because
This must be a notice period.
it's still it's still making money. They're not, I don't see cable going away for another 10 years at least.
And especially, as fraught as streaming has suddenly become. What are the alternatives?
Yeah.
I mean, streaming it started out pretty good and it looked pretty good, and now. The future of streaming is up in the air.
So I am concerned with the fact that both of the biggest contracts are up at the same time. Because we don't know how those are gonna play off of each other, but we'll see what happens, because there is a clause in both contracts that says if one gets something less than the other.
Yeah, it's like
then
the
they both-
level playing
Yeah,
field.
level playing field.
Yeah.
So that would
But-
be a question.
That has happened before. Because when I was president of WCAT a long time ago. We had 3 contracts, one right after the other one year. We had Verizon, Comcast, and RCN, one right after the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is precedent for that.
You want to jump into the streaming conversation now, since you already kind of talked?
Yeah,
about it?
let's go ahead and talk about the streaming now.
So I'll have some handouts here, but I just want to. So. Just,
Is this the same one that's on the Govenda for the streaming bill 2771 and 34?
Yes.
yes,
Okay, great.
just to back up a little bit about what the original bill said, both the House bill and the Senate bill were the same.
Yeah.
And just to summarize those bills, it was gonna be 5% of gross revenues of the streaming companies. Of that money, 20% would go to the state general fund, 40% would go to the municipality based on population, and 40% would go to the cable access stations based on population. So, February was the drop dead date, under Joint Rule 10. You can extend, they extended until April, whatever, 8th, I can't remember which. They re-extended until May 6th. On May 6th, they discharged it from committee with a favorable recommendation, but they rewrote it. And then they rewrote it again,
How extensively?
very extensively. So, I'm gonna read just part of it, but I'll give you the sum. There is no more 5% gross. There is no more money to the general fund. There is no more money to the municipalities. In essence. So under 2771, and I'll just read you some key parts of this. What it does is. Oh, yeah, no, that's something else. This is the follow-up based on what this is. So it says. There shall be within the Department of Telecommunications and Cable a PEG access facilities revenue advisory board. The advisory board shall consist of the commissioner of the Department of Revenue or their designee, who shall serve as the chair, the director of rural affairs or their designee, the commissioner of the Department of Telecommunications and Cable or their designee, the president of Massachusetts Community Media or their designee, which is Mass Access to Treatment, and the president of the New England Connectivity and Telecommunications Association or their designee. That's likely the streaming companies, right? So that's the advisory board. This is the key piece here. The advisory board shall meet not less than annually. The advisory board shall collect industry data, including but not limited to: 1, historical and existing revenue levels for PEG access facilities in the Commonwealth. 2, historical and current revenues paid by cable operators as part of any franchise fee. 3, historical and current streaming entertainment service revenues derived from the sale or provision for streaming entertainment services to individuals and businesses in the Commonwealth. And 4, any additional information as requested by the advisory board. And this is now the very key piece. The results of the data collected shall be reviewed and analyzed by the advisory board annually, and the board shall make a recommendation for a streaming entertainment service assessment rate in its annual report that would, together with any revenue provided under a franchise fee, provide each operator of PEG access facilities with at least the same level of total revenue as the average of the 3 highest years of revenue for each operator of PEG access facilities prior to the enactment of this chapter. So that's a huge change. So before I pass out the second part, and this, the whole bill is in the Govenda package, along with the original bill that was the Senate 34. So 2771 went to the Senate. So we finally got a copy of the bill number so I could print it so I could read it. And we reached out to Liberty Garabedian for the copy of the
House.
the House bill.
Mm-hmm.
She, and I should have known this, but I didn't, or I forgot or whatever, but she mentioned to Ian at the groundbreaking up here. The House had already sent their budget to, they're done with their budget. They've completed their budget. So 2771 was proposed by Lewis to be an amendment to the Senate budget, Amendment 203, right? And they had maybe 20 co-sponsors of that. Apparently, they realized that it would have no success getting through as part of the budget, so they withdrew it. Which means it's still active, but not submitted with the budget. So now what I think that means is that 2771 is now gonna get talked about by the Senate. The House bill, which is gonna be identical if all things stay the same, because the original two bills were the same. Now the House will have to get involved and deal with it. And assuming that those things are agreed upon, maybe they do it, maybe they just pass it. And we end up with what that, this assessment board and then the calculation of the rate paid by the streamers. If they're not identical, then it goes to a conference committee. The conference committee got to hammer it out. And then make a recommendation. And then ultimately, you see where it goes. So along those lines, and this is.
Do you have the digital one of this?
Huh?
Do you have the digital one of this?
Of which,
This packet?
no, I don't. I just have it, what I have, on my PC. That's why I had to print these off. I had to print them probably at home. So these are all the same. If you can just, sure. Sure. So I'll go through this real quick because. It's not much different. This is yours, Bill. I'll hold it up. All right, so the first page here is just historical subscriber information for WCAT from 2002 to 2020 by the three vendors. And then you can see in the right-hand corner, the percent change in subscribers from 02 to 23 was down 17, call it 18%. The change from 15 to 23 was down 35%. Okay, that's that page. This is all information that's from Mass Access and Mass Gov. It's the website. The second page is the change of the three vendors, just 22 and 23. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up. So you have Wakefield Comcast, Wakefield RCN, Wakefield Verizon, and then the totals. And you can see that Comcast and RCN, which is a minor player, there's only 336 RCN subscribers, hardly any. So anyway, the total of those three year over year is down 9.2%. Then the next section is Mass Comcast, Mass RCN, and Mass Verizon. The combination of those is down 11.2%. So the good news is Wakefield is down less than the state for the same three companies. And then there are 7 total providers in Massachusetts, which coincidentally are also down 11.2%. So, and this is where it gets a little tricky. So the third page is, these figures are taken from the audited financials, only guaranteed. So I just did franchise fees from 15 to 23. Capital funding was in there. It's all part of another spreadsheet that I had, and then the totals. But for my purposes, because there's so many things that are wrong with the rewritten bill. Like it doesn't address how capital is involved. It doesn't address whether it's by population or if Boston's going to get the same amount of money as Wakefield's going to get. There's just so many holes in it that it's almost comical. It got rewritten with no one's, if anything that comes out of committee is done all behind closed doors. You don't know how anybody votes. Nobody saw what was rewritten. Certainly nobody saw the second version of what was rewritten. So what I did was, when you get down to the bottom part of that page, the 3 highest years are 16, 17, and 18. And the average of those 3 years is $418,000 for Wakefield. So I took the 418, this is pretty, this is rudimentary at best, but I was doing it on the fly. So I took the 418 I subtracted what we got in 2023 of the 361. And that would mean, the way I see it, is Wakefield would get $56,000. All right. So among other things that, and then the rest of it is just graphs of everything I just gave you, so that's nothing. So one of the things I think, so that all I'm looking at is the franchise fees here CAT gets. Because obviously when the PEG fees come in, you know, they go to the town and
Thanks,
whatever
Ian.
the allotment is, let's say it's roughly 2/3 and a third, just for sake of discussion, right? So the high school gets a third and CAT gets the 2/3. I'm assuming that there's gonna be no capital under the streaming thing because the capital contributions by the PEG stations are under the cable bill, right? So there is no streaming bill, so there's no,
It's never even been addressed.
never been addressed, right? So that's why I just used the franchise fees. So the same thing would hold true for the high school component of this. They would get, you know, whatever, you know, 1/3 of that amount, and they would get that. So if that's the way it works, and if that's what happens, and like I say, there's still, for me, there's still a lot of holes in what happens. And first of all, I just want to just highlight a couple of things. Altogether, there were roughly 8 co-sponsors between the two bills net of 200 legislators. So people
Across both houses.
across both houses.
Mhm.
So 98 people endorsed a bill that got rewritten twice. And was filed as an amendment to the budget bill. If I'm one of those people, I'm gonna say. That's not the bill that I sponsored a bill that was giving money to the general fund. I sponsored money that was giving money to my municipality.
Right,
I don't know if I like this bill or not.
right.
I wouldn't if it were me.
In some ways, it's almost seems as though this bill was rewritten to fail.
It was rewritten to, appease people that thought, well, there were two components, so let's look at the two components that didn't get included. And I think I said this originally a couple of meetings back. There was some discussion early on during the public hearing that the 5% for the general fund was because it was determined that the state was gonna have to do some additional calculations. But the department that does those calculations is already in place. So they would just take the streaming money and, so it might not, you know, they're already doing it for cable. So they wouldn't need necessarily to get more people just to add in fees for the streams. So that was a discussion. The other one was the money going to the municipalities. How was that gonna be perceived? Was that gonna be a tax? That the subscribers were paying? No matter what it is, though, if you look at your cable bill, whatever, I think my cable bill says my PEG fees are like $5 or $6. I mean, it's nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be the same for everybody. You know, you can cut your cable package and you just pay less cable. You don't even have to cut it all out. You can just reduce what you're getting.
Right.
Right,
And you pay a lower fee. So anyway, you've got a percentage of the legislators that are saying, what are we doing, right? So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure where it's gonna go. And the other part of it is, there's obviously the component of the streaming lobby and what that means to legislators from a fundraising standpoint. So a lot of moving parts. I would be kind of surprised, I think, if it went anywhere. I would assume that it would die, but I don't know. I really, you know.
Yeah, there were also legislators who liked the idea that there was monies going to the general fund of the communities.
Yeah,
That was kind of part of how they were pushing it. Hey,
right.
get behind this guy, you're gonna get a few more
Right.
dollars, yeah.
For you guys specifically, but when you think about it, I'm pretty sure that April was the first month that the state budget was anywhere near right for what they had forecast. I mean, it was off by millions of dollars, the state budget. Why wouldn't you want that money to go to the general fund to support all these other initiatives? So a lot of things like that come into play. So that's kind of where we are on it now. you know, it's, you know, call it June, sessions end in July.
Right.
You know, gotta get through the House, gotta get through the Senate. If there's a committee, gotta get through the joint committee.
Well, and the sessions end early this year because of elections. Normally, they wouldn't end until midnight on December 31st, but they're done.
Well, they usually take their summer hiatus.
They do, but
August.
also because this is an election year, the
Right.
the House and the Senate will adjourn for the year to campaign.
Right.
So we're gonna lose the fall.
Right.
For any work.
Brian, thank you for doing all the work, sending it in, and I don't remember this from reading it. There is no date. Like if this passes, right? Let's say by a miracle, is there a date? Because I don't remember reading it, when this committee will be sent up, and
Yeah,
maybe I
so
missed it.
that's when I first heard it, before I got a copy of the bill. Only because I was involved, I was long retired and I was out of the item and everything else, but there was a commission that was formed, a journalism commission that was formed and passed. It was the acts of 2020. And they were forming this commission. It was gonna be 23 members. 11 of those members were defined where they were coming from, exactly where they were coming from. And everybody else was, you know, members of the, you know, that weren't part of big trade groups or minority sections of the population. It took from 2020, when it was passed, to 2022 to put the commission together.
Right.
They met one time, they haven't met since, nothing has happened, and everybody bitches about community newspapers are going down. So, to Steve's question, it says, the municipal streaming fund, section 3 effective date, this act shall take effect upon its passage.
The act will,
Right.
but when will they set up this committee? When will
Well,
the committee meet?
Supposedly, I think, I'd have to go back and look at it
Yeah.
again, Steve, but I think it was gonna be, the advisory board would have to be set up right away.
Okay.
And get ready, so, again, we'll.
I'll reread that and look at it.
Right.
I'm looking at that. It'll be,
You know, when might
Yeah.
we do the
Yeah.
back to get money?
oh, yeah,
Um,
you're talking fiscal years away.
at least
2 years,
fiscal- at
2 years to study it, 1 year to get set up, 1 year to study it, and then you're
Then
talking,
they've got to agree.
Yeah.
So the other
Right.
question, and again, you can talk about this all night, but the other question was gonna be. It could go either way. So right now, the cable numbers are 5%, right, gross commissions for cable. And it was gonna be 5% for the streaming companies, which is why they did it that way. Under this scenario. It's likely that to make up a difference of the 3 highest years, that the streamers would actually be paying a smaller percentage of their income than the cable companies. At some point, you could almost see that flip, and the streamers would be paying more, and they'd be saying, why are we paying more than what the cable companies have to pay? So there's all those things that are built. To me, one of the biggest things is, because it came up, you know, years ago about the cable things, is that, you know, Boston, Worcester, Springfield, you know, the really big cities, they basically get the same amount. That was what was so nice about based on population, so that the bigger cities and towns would get more money out of the streaming bills, which would make sense. You know, why should Linfield get the same amount of money as Boston or Wakefield?
Right.
So anyhow, lots left to do.
Just have one comment I'd like to make. When you look at the 3 highest years average, that's 418,000. The streamers are gonna plug the gap. That means this company has to operate at 418,000 until this bill goes away. That's it. 418,000 number, if the cable numbers go down, the streamers go in. So I look at this as a streamer protection against the revenue. They only have to make up that amount.
Right.
And if most of the people have already cut the cord, you know, they have a very limited window. And but be that as it may, as motivation, we're only gonna have 418,000 to deal with.
Right, and
that's
to
not
tie
gonna-
into that, that's a great point, and to tie into that. They've made you whole for your highest years of revenue, but your expenses are always gonna be going.
right,
You know, you've got, if not enough, you've got wage increases, but you've also got, you know, everything else.
Insurance increases, equipment costs,
Software increase.
software increase, software licensing increases.
Different than what was presented that made a whole lot more sense, I think, that would have made a difference. Because at one time, I think, and I should, because I didn't do this before when I talked about you guys, and I probably should have, but I don't know if I was thinking about it. I had used a number of roughly 111,000, I think, based on the numbers that were provided by Mass Access, based on 2021 streaming numbers and all of that. And I just took, you know, average populations and all of that, came up with $111,000 that I was presenting that would come here.
Mm-hmm.
That 111, all things being equal, was gonna go 2/3 to here and 1/3 to the schools. So, you know, it could turn out that the 56,000 is about the same anyway, but
Right.
it's not solving long-term problems. It's a stopgap at best, but to Steve's point, it's when you get the money, that's what really matters.
Yeah,
And
Matters fast.
the 2023 subscriber numbers came out, which are on here, and it's basically year over year, it's 11% statewide. Wakefield is only 9% of a loss. So we do have a slight benefit.
And is it based on rolling years? So eventually 16, 17, 18 would drop off?
So
It
Okay.
doesn't seem that way. It seems like it's to the three highest, Baldwin is the three highest years you ever had.
Okay,
Not the last 3 years, but the three highest years.
Okay.
Mm.
we don't know if the commission is able to redesignate that.
Right,
It doesn't say.
right. Now, if I'm the streamer, so I'm gonna say, wait a minute. I wanna
yeah,
do
you want to roll it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And,
well, and as I said earlier, the streaming industry itself is in such turmoil right now.
Yep.
It's not turning out to be quite the bonanza that everyone thought it was going to be, so. Thank you. Okay. Recommendations to town council.
so there is in the packet a reworked memo, which obviously we have to add this meeting in there.
Yeah.
In the first paragraph.
Yeah.
And was out in the package, so anybody who has comments and
Steve, this is the one that you rewrote.
rewrote based on
Dates
our,
of our-
exactly,
Our
yeah, so
last
you've had it for a
meeting.
while, yeah, I know.
I had one comment that I thought it looked great. I thought. in
Oh,
terms
good,
of-
that's it, stop there.
Nice price, nice try.
So in terms of recommendations, one of the things that we talked about here was the fact that, how does this working group continue to provide town council, town administrator with guidance as we go into this turmoil going forward? And we had talked about the fact that we would recommend that the committee, like a working committee, become a, permanent part. So that, we're not, necessarily, at huge risk of a whole new slate of town councilors to come in and say, oh, we don't like this idea, throw it overboard. So I think if the town council feels that the work that this committee has done is as valuable as I think it is, and we feel like it would help them make decisions because we're down in the weeds and things are going on,
Mhm.
I would recommend there be some language that recommends that this committee meet on a continual basis. And
Recommendation 3 doesn't do it for you then.
it's good as far as sort of what I'd like to infer that over the life of the cable contracts, this is indicated for a year. This is the timing we would meet for a year. That doesn't indicate that it should survive beyond 1 year. And maybe that's all we need this week. Unless people disagree that this a body of this nature would be.
Comments, anyone else?
My memory was that we were talking about continuing to meet just less frequently as we get through the high school rebuild and, how much that winds up costing, that 250 number in brackets that you have, the 250 grand and the fall off in revenue.
Mhm.
that we would, we're not going anywhere. We're just, making it every 3 months or whatever, every 6 months or whatever we,
So you're
Deem
saying there's an
appropriate.
assumption of longevity until you.
I would say, my opinion is
Mm.
assumption of longevity and continuity.
Yeah.
Until someone says otherwise, until we say otherwise, and report that to the council. I would
Okay.
imagine that we will be reporting to the council on the 10th at our next meeting. With this, if it's approved, and say, okay, folks, take a read of that. Everything's okay right now, but darker days may be coming. And we'll, keep you informed and report back to you periodically.
Paul, I understand what you're saying. What if on item 3, we added the WCAT working group be deemed a standing committee? I think that might take some of the angst away
Yeah, I think that's
until the TC deems otherwise, because they can,
right.
you know.
Standing committee, I think that sort of is more direct in terms of an ongoing,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement, there should be some ongoing. When you get into a standing committee ongoing, get into issues of, how long someone should be on it or those kind of issues, but that's beside the point at this moment. And in my opinion, it's standing committee would be super.
Right.
I think that's it.
I can- Great, because I think that if we get something out of this, I'm gonna call it the streaming bill, even though I don't know what to call it anymore.
Or
Yeah.
even if it isn't.
If it is anything, right?
Yeah.
And maybe something happens this summer, with that. Who knows? We may call a meeting in September to talk about that. Hey, we know the effects now. We think we have something. So we
Yeah.
can call a meeting anytime,
Yeah,
really.
that's fine.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that we've sort of talked internally that when we present a budget on an annual basis, we're going to show what we see as a forecast for the
Yeah.
next 2 years.
Mhm.
And that'll give us an idea of, geez, we put in this 50,000 for the streaming bill, and it looks like it's gonna be, we can adjust it. As you say, it's probably not gonna mean any dollars in our bank account for a while. But just keeping a sense of the horizon is good, certainly good for the board and for this committee.
Any other comments on that? No other comments?
So I'm looking that, I'm gonna change the date of this memo to, I'll change it to today, I guess, which is the
Yeah.
22nd, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I'm gonna add today's meeting to the first paragraph.
Yeah.
I already took care of a editorial comment made by somebody. And on item 3 and recommendations, I will change that. The WCAT working group be deemed a standing committee, comma, meet periodically, comma, and then continue on.
Yep.
And I'll send that
That
out
sounds good.
tomorrow.
I move approval of it.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Thank
Opposed?
you.
Unanimous. All right.
And
Okay,
that'll be on the agenda on the 10th. Okay. Don't have to check with anybody. The chair has decided.
okay. I need to talk to you about the 10th. After the meeting. All right, approval of, huh?
Yeah.
On the
Right.
porch,
On the
yeah,
porch, yeah.
yeah. Approval of minutes for March 13th, 2024. Do I have comments or a motion?
I move to accept the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Approved. Okay. Group member comments. We'll go around the table one by one and we'll start with the lady.
I don't
Welcome.
know that I really have anything. I think I can pass on.
Okay. Mike?
No comments. Appreciate everybody's time. It's been a very good working group.
Brian?
I know.
Ian?
Uh,
Paul?
Just an update on when you should expect to see some additional financial information.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the process of starting our budget process now. And gonna be a little harder than normal because we're looking at a potential operation going forward that starts to break new ground in new areas. We're trying to figure out what production services income we may be able to generate. So I'm expecting that, the finance committee at WCAT will present the budget for the WCAT board to approve most likely in August. Generally around September or maybe October is when we have the audited financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be helpful to have sort of the audited financial statements as the foundation. Here's what we did last year, here's what the budget is this year, we present that anyway. So we can figure out the timing of the next meeting in that context. I guess the question I would have is whether, whether it's too soon after, too late after the start of fiscal year for us to be looking at the budget. The way I look at it is that the board has approved the budget, and it's WCAT's responsibility to provide it to the working committee to keep them updated, just like we audited. So I think if we have the audited financial statements and the budget for the year and the 2-year look ahead, it'll be could be one meeting that's comprehensive, and so I propose something along those lines.
So Paul, you're thinking September, October, or somewhere in that time frame? Is
Yeah,
that-
we yeah, it's probably September. I'm trying to think when the audit was done. We have a November tax filing date, so I think it's September.
Well, I think this year we got the beginning of October,
Okay,
end of September, beginning of October. Because I had just stepped in when those showed up.
okay, that's right. You know, we'll be into these. Yeah, September, end of September, probably.
Okay,
I'm good.
you're good, Steve?
I'm good. So is that the date that you want to meet again with this group? You know,
I was
unless
really
something
putting
else
out
happens.
there was how I saw
Yeah.
things were going to be evolving, what we should expect in the context of our going forward. Here's the actual schedule forecasting, keeping everybody updated.
Mm-hmm.
If I think the good things were outside of the summer vacation timeframe.
I guess I would have a question, Mr. Chair, if we set, or if you set a date for September and we had revelations that warranted another one, you could call one.
I
Oh,
could
yeah,
always call a
anytime,
meeting
anytime,
earlier. You just need to let me know so I can get the word out, but yeah,
So I think maybe we set for September, if that works for everybody. And then if
I think
something-
September,
Look at
yeah,
what the audited financial
Yeah.
statements came out.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the month, and you know, either Ian and I can get back to you, David, on when the opinion was signed last year.
Yeah.
And then based on what's happening with other
Yeah.
committees, choose a date around that time.
because at this stage, based on the discussion tonight especially, I don't see anything pressing over the course of the summer. The bills probably won't be settled until late August, early September, before they adjourn for electioneering. And then the financials on the WCAT side, so September looks good,
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
yeah.
And then follow up with Gordy Malone as far as sure that can fit the schedule. I
Okay,
think it should work.
okay. All right,
You want to keep 9/18 as a placeholder?
yeah, let's do that,
That's a Wednesday. That seems to work for everybody.
let's
Is
do
that too
that, yeah.
soon? Based
Uh,
on historical times that you get these reports.
We can always change the date if
Last year,
if circumstances arise that we feel we
Sure.
need to change the
Yeah.
date, we can always do that. And, you know, I'll just poll everyone as to what their vote will be.
I think
So,
Ian's gonna have a copy of the opinion date, hard copy if my battery dies as I try to look up the same thing.
okay, so we're looking at Wednesday, September 18th, Steve?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting as a placeholder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
So it'll be on the first page, signature down at the bottom of the date.
October 31st.
October 31st. Okay, well, that kind of changes the September 18th date. I will, let me follow up with.
Okay.
Tony and Fear.
All right.
But there's still the,
Well,
the placeholder of September 18th is.
Well- we'll keep the placeholder date of September 18th, pending any other developments.
Okay.
Sound good?
Hey, I
Yeah,
had a quick comment. I don't know if
Sure.
I feel it sounds like we already moved to a future date, but Hey, Brian, I was wondering, I noticed in this bill, it says that it doesn't include video program provided by a commercial mobile service provider. And I thought that was kind of a weird thing to put in there because Google has its own wireless provider and they also sell YouTube TV as cable. And I didn't know if that would accept them from this particular bill or if there are any particular thoughts on that.
That's a good question.
Sounds exactly why I put it in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know, Bill, to be honest with you,
That's fair.
yeah, too technical for me, but I agree with Ian, I mean, I think they're gonna they'll strip as much stuff out as they can possibly strip out, I'm sure. For whatever reasons, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
okay, thank you very much. All right, so right now, our future meeting schedule will be September 18th, unless something comes up in the meantime over the next 3 months. All right, Cable Advisory Committee meeting. Hopefully everyone saw the recording. Comments? Actually, Brian, I'll let you open the comment.
I thought it was a good meeting, I can actually, Bill can chime in here as well, you know, they talked about, you know, I gave them an update on the bill as I knew it at the time, which at that time it had just been re-extended to May 6th, so it was all pre any of this.
Yeah.
Dan talked about, comments that might come up at town meeting, Bill, if I remember correctly, about the portion of the town budget that relates to WCAT. I think it's made it sound like there was gonna be funding in the budget, but my understanding is that's just the money that's in the budget is just
That's the pass through.
the projection on the basket, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't
Right.
anything that was gonna be increased or decreased for that, so,
And that's new because DOR requested that we do it that way.
Yeah.
Used to never be in the budget.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Or in the presentation.
No, because under the original legislation for funding access, it was just a pass through, period, the end. It came in one end and went out the other. That's it.
and I think that's what Dan was alluding to.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he knew that it had changed or not, but I think that's what he was thinking about. They see a number for CAT and if you're not looking at it, you're saying, well, wait a minute, is this more money for CAT or is it, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
So that was.
Yeah,
I think it was a significant amount of time spent talking about a 20-year capital plan. I don't know if you folks heard that, but you know, there should be a 20-year capital plan. Capital expenditures are relatively lumpy. And it seemed to me that it was being released sort of in the context of the town having to be able to understand what the capital needs were. I think I'm going to mention the building committee. So that piece was somewhat out in left field as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. It seemed like there was a lot of time on that bill, don't you think?
I mean, we just spent a lot of time talking about that, yes.
Yeah. So I'm not sure whether there's anything that we should sort of conclude based on that, except that maybe someone should sit down and give them a better idea of how the capital has been running, or I'm not sure. I just wanted to make note that if you hear that and try to equate it to what we're doing, it's not what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think too, to be fair, if you think about, you know, capital is usually for big expenditures, capital wise, but if it's for technology, think about where technology was 20 years ago and who would have forecast where we are today, and that's a long forecast.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
3-year forecast is long, 20
Yeah.
years is. I don't think there's a company that does 20-year forecasts for anything, so. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
I mean, you just look at the changes technology wise in the 28 years since I started teaching here at WCAT and what we had in 1996 versus, you know, what's around today. The whole landscape has changed drastically.
I just read a dissertation that there's a new petabyte disk.
Really?
Sounds scary.
Yeah.
It's just like a DVD. with about 60 layers and it's 3D compaction and it holds 125,000 gigabytes. And they're saying they're about 5-10 years away from practicality,
Wow.
but they have a working model of a petabyte disk.
I think if I'm, to be fair for Dan's comments, which I don't know if that's necessarily like, the funding model here is, I think the point he had here was, well, you could always reevaluate this, like, when you get down the road. But, like if there's no way that we can swing a 20-year funding model with adjustments down the road, then, we can't do that.
Well, I just think it's a little unusual that a town committee would indicate how a independent nonprofit corporation would choose to
Man,
project and
yeah.
manage its finances.
yeah,
We're not part of the town, even though we provide great services. That's what's great, this little gray. And I can understand why people would be confused about that, but, so I think you've seen from the information we provided, and we have an idea of what the cable contracts say we're gonna get for funding.
right,
So we spend within our means. And so that's, and some of these contracts are 10 years in fact, and if they, so it's, I think it's just important to make sure it's clear that this is managed, has been in a way that's different because we're not part of the town.
right. And that might be a message for WCAT to kind of get out there quietly. But, make sure people understand that it's not part of town government. There's been that misapprehension in the past. Maybe it's starting again.
Well, in my opinion, it's only an issue if we start to get sort of muddied as far as the financial side of the equation.
Mhm.
I think the perception that we are part of the town is what we want people to know as far as how we contribute, how we're a part of the fabric of the town. So
Right.
I would think, unless some of the people that are involved with sort of addressing the issues that we're trying to address, don't understand that, then I would think that we would encourage people to think of us as a key part of the town.
Okay. Anything else? Around the table once more? No? Any last comments, Brian?
No.
Ian?
Nope, we're just plugging away and we are keeping ourselves going. It's been very busy. We have graduation coming up. And we're looking forward to having a little bit of downtime in the summertime before we stick back up into everything in September.
You have movies this summer?
We will have movies this summer, yes, we are trying as hard as we can. Barbara has taken that particular project on herself to get as many sponsors as possible.
Yep.
So we're not bearing the brunt of the bill for that because
Mhm.
WCAT does put the entire bill. So we're looking for as many sponsors as we can get, and she's been knocking on everybody's door.
Good, excellent.
No.
Paul? No? Steve?
Nope, good.
Any more comments? Okay. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.